So a lot of my methods have been deemed maybe slightly unconventional. Moneybox even commented on one of my TikToks basically saying like, this is a very wild method to be using. So yeah, do with these tips what you will, but this is what helped me save my house deposit. So the first one I'm noticing is actually similar to the zero-based budgeting method that's sometimes used, but just slightly more extreme. So when I got paid, rather than saving a certain percentage of my earnings into a savings account, I would transfer 100% of those earnings into that account and then put my actual account at zero, which means that I've still got bills to pay. So what would happen is I had an overdraft. Luckily, my overdraft was interest free, so I didn't actually have to pay any fees or anything like that. But essentially I'd use my overdraft to pay all my bills, even just have fun. Whatever I was gonna buy for that month, I'd use my overdraft for, so then my bank account would be in minus. And then when I got paid again, I would take that amount back to zero, so pay for everything that I've used, and then transfer whatever else I had left from getting paid back into that savings account again. So essentially what this did was basically trick my mind into thinking that I was always broke, didn't have any money, and that I'd need to either earn more or spend less, and both of those worked. I mean, once I got used to it, I know I couldn't trick my mind that much anymore, but it still really worked because it meant that I was saving majority, in fact everything almost that I was earning, as opposed to just saving a little £100 here, £100 there. It would have took me a lot longer using that method to get to the final end goal. So this one I actually stick by, and still after buying a house implement this to this day. So my next goal is to be able to save maybe around 20k for my, or at least part of the renovation, which is like the kitchen, things like that. I might need more, I'm not sure, but either way, my next goal is 20k, and I'm gonna be using the same method to do that. This brings me on to tip number 2, one I didn't actually use, but that's to open up a lifetime interest savings account, also called a LISA. Unfortunately, I didn't know about this until it was too late, but it's something that you can majorly benefit from, especially if you're buying a house. If you're just saving for the sake of it, this isn't going to be for you. But if you're saving to buy a house, then definitely open up a lifetime ISA. I feel like it's a very good savings account to have as opposed to any others, and essentially the government give you 25%, so you get back £1 for every £4 that you put in, so 25%, up to the amount of £1,000. That's in 3 years you can have an extra £3,000 towards your house deposit, which is major. And then if you're buying with a partner, both of you can do this separately, which means potentially £6,000 towards your first house. Again, major. It's a no-brainer. Everyone should be doing it. If you're not, open up a LISA. The next thing I did was focus on earning more as opposed to saving more or spending less. For me, earning more was crucial. One, because I love business, I love entrepreneurship, and me focusing on getting more clients was exciting as opposed to me suffering and saving money and not buying things that I like or not going on holiday and things like that. So for me, earning was crucial. There is a few ways that I did this. Yes, one was kind of just increasing my income streams. So I do social media. I started working with more clients on social media strategy, things like that. But then one way that was kind of like an accident, but would recommend if it's possible for you to do, was actually, I basically became a loan shark. So I borrowed someone £5,000 and we agreed on a 1% interest rate until it was paid off. And no matter how much they paid off, that 1% would still stay the same, which is obviously £50. So essentially they were giving me £50 a month every single month for, I think this went on for about 2 years, which was amazing. One, I'm getting £50 interest every single month. Great. I used to spend that on just anything, takeaways, little outings here and there. And two, I no longer had this £5,000 in my possession, which meant that it was no longer at risk of getting spent unnecessarily. So it was one way to kind of lock my money away and another thing to earn interest on it. So if you're in a position whereby that's possible, would highly recommend it. Of course, need to be with someone that you trust. We also had this in writing, me and that person, so I'm not sure how legally enforceable that contract would have been, but it was something that we both signed. So yeah, that definitely, I would say, if that opportunity was to arise again, I'd be doing it 100%. Little caveat though, I did absolutely trust the person that I was giving the money to. Like, I don't think there's a lot of people I could do that with, but if that particular person wanted to do it again and I had the funds, by all means. Although I'm not sure they'd be silly enough to do it again, and they'd probably be able to get a cheaper loan at a bank. But I think the issue was I wasn't able to get loans at the bank, which is why, you know, it was a very unique opportunity. But they say the definition of luck is when opportunity meets preparation, and that's exactly what happened in that scenario. Now, the third thing is to get an accountability partner. Mine was my sister, and essentially, when I say accountability partner, I mean someone that you're going to consult every single time you want to spend an amount of money that is above a certain figure. So for me, that was large purchases, anything that was 4 figures and upwards, or even sometimes 3 figures, depending on how expensive that thing was. I'd go to my sister and I'd be like, hey, just me again, I've been thinking about spending X amount on this item. One of the things was actually my Invisalign, which was supposed to be 2.5 grand, but then in getting Invisalign I had to get a baby tooth removed, which ended up being another 2.5 grand. I think it was about 2.5 or 2. So in the end, all in all, I spent about 4 to 5 grand on my whole teeth journey, but that was super justifiable because my job being in front of the camera takes a lot of like confidence, all those types of things, and I felt like, as at the time as well, I was doing more modeling, and I felt like me having better teeth than I did, one, was going to help my confidence, and two, was going to be able to like increase the amount of money I could make, if that makes sense. Because when I was doing modeling, I limited myself to like what type of pictures I would take, how smiley my pictures would be, but me correcting my smile meant that I just felt like it would, again, boost my confidence, but also potentially boost the amount of money I made. No regrets on that front, but that was just an expense I consulted my sister about before I made it, and had to kind of justify it to her before I could make that purchase. And a lot of the times when I did this meant that I felt sometimes silly justifying some things because they just weren't feasible. Like, so let's say for example I'm trying to justify something that just isn't justifiable, and I'm trying to say to my sister, yeah, like I really need this thing. One, I don't believe it, so it's even highlighting to me that I'm being ridiculous. But two, my sister's then able to tell me, girl, you don't need that item, or you don't need that experience, or you don't need that thing, leave it alone. It definitely helped me to kind of draw back some of the large purchases I could have made had I not had that accountability. But I have noticed that a lot of people are super secretive when it comes to finances, and they don't like discussing money with everyone. But I'm very different to that. Like, I'll discuss finances. If you ask me, like, I'll answer, and sometimes if you don't ask me, I'll still give you information, because I just feel like that should be an open topic. How are we going to improve if nobody shares? Why are we gatekeeping financial literacy? It makes no sense. Now, number 4 is one that I think most people do anyway, but just to reiterate, it is keeping your savings in a separate account to what you usually use, and not just a separate account. So for example, if I bank with Barclays, I don't just have my normal current account and then a savings account within Barclays. I choose to have a separate savings account with a completely different bank. One, because when I'm logging into my online banking, I don't want to have to see my savings. The more times I see it, the more likely I am to try and spend it in other places, whereas I just believe in out of sight, out of mind when it comes to savings. So for me, I was saving in a Monzo bank account, and I don't use Monzo for anything day to day, so I would never need to log on to that app unless I'm literally trying to deal with my savings. So it just eliminated having to see that money, having to remember that I've got it to spend, and just helped me not spend unnecessarily. So out of sight, out of mind, get yourself a separate savings account. Now, the next one is not advice. I repeat, it is not advice, it's just an observation. It would be very inauthentic for me to disregard the fact that people's sons played a part in my saving journey. Now, if someone wants to treat me, who am I to tell them that they shouldn't? Whether that's buying me, like, you know, little things like trainers, or whether that's taking me out to eat, all these little things add up, and it meant that one, I wasn't spending as much money going on like little restaurant dates because I wasn't paying for them, and two, I wasn't as tempted to spend my money on little random things like little retail therapy trips to buy some trainers when I don't actually need them, or some shoes when I don't actually need them, because I was getting that fix through somebody else. Yeah, I'm not saying this is advice, I'm just saying that I recognise that this did help at the time. I did actually post this as well on my Instagram, and someone was like, I'm showing my sons this so that they basically never get with someone like you. But personally, I just feel like you gotta play the game. Teamwork makes the dream work, and if they play their cards right, they'll be there to reap the benefits the same way. If they don't play their cards right and they mess up, that's on them. Just saying. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna label this advice as accept help. The last thing I'd mention is that once I got over a certain amount, which I would say was around the 10k mark, like, it became a game. Like, it was like shocking that I'd reached, how many figures is that? 5 figures, like, in my bank account. Never seen that before. So once I got there, I was like, wow, like, how high can I actually get this number? And then it just became like this, it was one, a habit to save, but then two, it became this exciting thing to see how high I could get the number. So it was no longer a struggle of, oh, I've got no savings, because at that point I was always going to have savings. I'm never just going to spend 10 grand on something. But it was, well, I'd end up buying a house, so I guess I did, but that's not the point. It did just become more natural to me to save. So yeah, just trust the process. So hopefully this video was helpful. If you're interested in my house buying journey, I have been uploading vlogs periodically, so make sure you check those out. Let me know what other videos you want to see from me, or any questions you might have. Drop them in the comments below and I'll make sure I answer them. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next video.